My account, so I pulled out my laptop. I saw more money than I had ever seen in my life, ever.
We're being very honest and transparent about the inner workings of this because I want people to understand that this is not magic. I won't say it's easy, but it's not complex. This is America. There's literally, nobody asked you what your father does for a living. Nobody asks you what race you are. Nobody asks you if you're a man or a woman. Not only do I not have a ceiling because of how I grew up and my family name, it actually adds to my story.
So I'm Justin Loutfy here with Buddy Rushing in the Pineda studio, which is, let's just pause on that because that's crazy in itself. Like you and I got connected a year ago when I joined White Feather after calling Greg 10 times, as I told you, and hadn't invested in real estate at all. And now here we are in the Pineda studio recording to talk about what's possible.
Yeah, and it's not even the most interesting or important thing that we're going to do this weekend.
No, it's
right?
not.
No offense. I mean, I'm a huge Pineda fan. I love it, and I love the studios, and it is crazy that we're here doing this and that it's accessible. But it's only one of the things that we're doing, one of the things that you have going on, right? And you were one of those people. I don't know if we're even getting into this yet, but like I was telling Kimberly this, my wife, on the way over here. I was like, you're one of those people that has no ceiling. And I don't know if you know that or have thought about that, but like your trajectory has been like a hockey stick, right? It's just been right. And people, like, one of the things I was talking to you about is a lot of people are going to get a little bit tripped up whenever they meet you and talk to you because you've been doing this a year, not 15 years like me. It took me so long.
Let me be honest, I've been doing this for 7-8 months.
7-8 months.
What is it, September?
Right?
9 months. We'll get it 9 months.
And it's like but you have no ceiling, I don't think. I personally don't think. I haven't seen it yet because I throw things at you and I try to break you and you just figure it out, right? So it's awesome to see.
Just makes me think of Rocky, like I try to break you. Well, it's actually cool because that's one of the things I wanted to tell you about. I don't think I've told you this before. We've talked about why I joined White Feather before, in that like I was in this executive role, which it was just this corporate ceiling, and I was like, okay, well, how else do I grow? But that was something I had felt a lot of places where, like in the Air Force, one of the reasons that I left was I got back from deployment, got to do cool things, and I was like, all right, I'm ready. And I wanted to apply to a lot. I got asked to teach at the Air Force Academy, wanted to do that, was told no. Like I found the White House Fellowship program, and I read the bios, and I was like, okay, I've done a lot of this stuff. I want to apply to this. And that's like sounded really up my alley, and they were like, no, you can't do that. I'm sorry. Wow. Like I was barely a captain. They're like, no, you can't do that.
That was right on the tail end of tell me, what did you actually do? I know, obviously, in the Air Force, I'm a Marine, right? So when we think of Air Force, we think of guys that drink coffee and like watch TV all day. And you know, that's pretty much it.
That's right.
But there are sections of the Air Force that are kind of badass, right?
Yes, there are. And
so what'd you do? What did you actually do?
So when I was in the Air Force, I was a JTAC or a TAC-P officer. And so my job we were pretty much like the holy shit line, we call it. Like when things were going bad with the Marines, who were super tough, and they went in there and they were fighting, and they're like, oh no, everything's going bad, like you would call the JTAC. And the JTAC would come in and solve all the problems, whether that meant bringing in bombs and planes or bringing in artillery or whatever the solution was in that area. Like that's what the JTAC was for. They were your 911 call for people in combat.
So I'm in a TIC or a combat situation called Truth in Contact. So I'm in a TIC, fighting it out. I need an extra hammer. We radio back and we say, hey, sit out the JTAC. JTAC comes in helicopter.
Well, parachute? I mean, sometimes that JTAC is going to be right next to you.
Okay. So maybe embedded in you, and you say, hey, JTAC, I need that building gone.
Yep.
And so you call in an A-10 or you call in a B-52 or whatever, right? Whatever the most appropriate thing is, and you level the building and you take care of the threat, and then we move on with the mission.
And then America keeps moving forward.
Perfect. Okay, so I will tell you this. So there are JTACs and other aspects of the military as well. And they're almost always pilots, or at least in the Marine Corps, most of the JTACs we work with were pilots.
Okay.
And that was like a tour for them, right? So they would fly, and then when they would sometimes deploy as JTACs, and they're the only pilots that we're not allowed to make fun of. because they're in it with you. They're getting shot at with you. They're getting blown up with you. They're getting killed with you. And they bring in the heat.
Yeah.
So anyway, just wanted to, military officers are notoriously humble, notoriously. And it's one of the things we're cautioned against when we go out in the civilian world. Is like, bro, you don't tell anybody what you actually bring to the table because you're so humble. And so they don't know. And so they don't know what they're working with. So anyway, I can feel that coming off of you. And I have beaten that out of myself. So I'm going to bring that out of you.
You're right. So when I was deployed as a first lieutenant, I took over for a lieutenant colonel. This lieutenant colonel left Iraq, and I was in Kuwait at the time, and they said, hey, like, Justin, I need you to go to Iraq and take over this squadron and turn it into a flight, like, which was, I don't know, 20, 30 people spread out across 6 locations, Iraq and Syria. And so I took over for this dude who was 10, 15 years more experienced than me to run combat operations in the country. Which was crazy, and it was cool, and like I got to do cool things. Like,
how old were you?
Shoots, 28.
28.
Yeah,
okay.
I think. Yeah, 28, 29. So, but I come back from that, and I'm like ready to conquer the world because I'm feeling on top of things. It was actually the first time I signed up for an Ironman was then, and everything I wanted to do, they said no to, and then I leave the Air Force, get into Amazon, same deal. Like, I felt like I could do more, ceilinged. And then I actually get into this COO position, and I was like, all right, cool. Like, but now I'm at the top. But everywhere I went, I just felt that ceiling. And
interesting.
And so that's what I was looking for, was something else, and just completely shattered that idea, like, during the course. And continues
during the accelerator.
Yeah, continues to shatter this idea of what's possible. I mean, like you were saying, Dre and I were driving to the airport yesterday, and it was a little stressful, right? Because the flight got delayed. We were running late. We got 2 girls. We're getting, they were getting watched by first my stepmom, then her mom, to make sure we can cover. Like, it was a little stressful when we were driving to the airport, and I was like, we really have no reason to stress right now. Like, you think about what we're doing. Like, we're flying to Vegas because I got invited to speak at a summit about financial freedom and real estate investing when 1 year ago, I signed up for White Feather's Accelerator course. Like, 1 year ago, I signed up for this course. And now, heading to Vegas to speak at a summit, here, recording a podcast about...
Yeah, man.
It's nuts.
Life comes too fast, huh? Yeah, no kidding, right? And what's crazy is I suspect that the topic that you're going to be speaking about is going to be one of the most popular ones. So we're breaking it out into a bunch of different, it's like, short-term rentals and syndications and wholesaling and raising money and all of the different things people want to hear about. But people don't know this yet, but the way that we're going to announce yours is come find out how this guy made $500,000 in 2 months by giving away $1 million.
Yeah.
That's a real wholesale. That is a real story that happened to you a few months ago.
Yes.
That's nuts. Who wouldn't want to hear that?
It is nuts. And I was like walking around and making sure, looking at the rooms today, and there are these giant like conference rooms. I was like, man, we're gonna talk through the same story, but it was nuts. And
for anybody that's listening who doesn't have any idea what the accelerator is, which is going to be most people because we don't tell people about it, right? It's something that we created to identify certain individuals who could build businesses, who could do amazing things. It isn't about helping somebody like make a little extra money, or like the way we, kind of identify or define the accelerator is it's like special forces training, right? You're not going to learn super basic stuff. You're going to be put into a pressure cooker. You're going to be squeezed. You're going to be taught what you needed to know, and then given the opportunity to excel or fail. And the wrong people will fail. And most people are the wrong people for that type of program. So what I tell Greg is, don't be apologetic. Don't be salesy. Don't try to get them into the course. Try to get them to pass. And if you can't get them, if you can't scare them away, and you can't get them to be like, I don't want to be a part of this, then they're probably the right people. And it's an inexact science, but every once in a while, and it happens, every single course, There are 1, 2, or 3 people in every course that are like you and Dave Ortiz and, Aaron and Milena, right? That come in, and it doesn't matter what they come in with, right? They could come in with no money, no experience, no network whatsoever. But because of the type of person they are, they come in with also no excuses. And they learn what they need to learn, and they do that. So let's talk about like your mindset going in, if you would, because I have Greg. Everybody goes through what I call the Greg gate, right? And I don't often know who they are, right? Until I do the financial freedom consultation with them, I don't even know who they are. So I didn't even know who you were, right? Never heard of you. Didn't seek you out. Didn't market to you. All of a sudden, I'm on this financial freedom call, and we're talking, and you're like, you've done all this stuff already before you even met me, right? You've executed all of this stuff. And I remember asking you like, bro, how are you doing all this? And you're like, I'm just doing what you tell me to do.
You put it in the videos.
You put it in the videos.
You literally said, do X, Y, and Z. And then you were so surprised that I did exactly what you said to do.
Most people don't.
Well, I paid $7,000 to do it.
Yeah, I guess. But like, there have been 350 people go through the accelerator, right? And it's like, I tell them all the same exact thing. But the difference between learning something and creating a life of your dreams is in the execution. Would you agree?
Yes, for
it's
sure.
100% in the execution. So how do you talk to me about that?
Well, so for the course, I'll tell you, it wasn't an easy decision for us. Like, I had never spent that much money on anything. Mm-hmm. And so Dre and I talked about it for a month at least. I'm like, should we do this? This is a lot of money. Like, I was making great money, mm-hmm. but it was still more money than I had ever thought about spending on anything.
Because you didn't grow up with money either.
No. And we didn't grow up broke. I grew up like most Americans in debt, mm-hmm. right? So my family was the one that maxed out all the debt. Mm-hmm. Sure. But I didn't grow up with money, no money. And, truthfully, I wasn't very good with money. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't have a ton in the bank. And we weren't sure if we were going to spend $7,000 on an internet course about investing in real estate. And that was our amount of knowledge. Mm-hmm. But I did know that I needed to do something because where I was, and it was great, I would tell you it was the best job that I could ever have asked for, but I also knew that there was nowhere else for me to go from there.
Right, you're COO, right?
Yeah. My only option would have been to go to a bigger company, which I had already worked for Amazon, so I knew I didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And so when we committed, I'll tell you, if I commit to anything, I'm going to go all in, like full speed until I figure out, well, this is dumb and drop it, or like I just take it all the way to wherever I want it to go. Mm-hmm. And so after that month and about 10 phone calls with Greg, I remember he gave me his cell phone number, and I was like, this dude's going to regret giving me his cell phone number because I would call him all the time. I'd be like, and I was asking him questions of like things that you learn in module 3 and module 4. Like, I've got this money, I want to invest. How do you do it?
Yeah.
and I called him so many times. And so we finally committed, and we're like, all right, like if we're going to put this kind of money down, we're going to go all in. Mm-hmm. And that was it. I knew I didn't know anything. So whatever it is I was going to learn, I was going to take as you put it. Mm-hmm. So month 1, we talk about financial budgeting. Like your basic, this is where you're spending wrong. This is why you're spending wrong. This is a better way to do it. Like, here's your personal vision of finances. Mm-hmm. And I watched all the videos and I did the homework, and I was like, yep, I've been screwing up. I've made more money every year. We've spent more money every year. Why we're making $200K this year and have no money in the bank? Well, buddy just said this is all the things we need to do. Mm-hmm. So that was that simple to me. And then we go into market analysis, and we look at, all right, well, we live in Southern California. I would love to buy homes in Southern California. It doesn't make sense. Why? Because no one's moving there, because homes are expensive, because rents are not anywhere close to it. Mm-hmm. And so then we're like, all right, well, let's look in Florida, because it matches all of the things that we learned here. And so you put it out. I'm going to take it as it comes, because one, I don't have any preconceived notions or like things that I know better of real estate. And 2, I financially and mentally invested in doing this. So I'm going to go all the way in.
And that's an incredibly powerful thing. You have a way of simplifying, or rather stating simply, something that's profound. And I want anybody that hears this to understand just how powerful it is that you just said. So all of the things that you just mentioned, people use as fear roadblocks that stop them from building anything, especially the life of their dreams. One, you're in California. It's expensive. That's the number one thing most people that talk to me about living in California. Oh, I could never live in California because it's just too expensive. Okay. I understand. When you think like that, it is going to be too expensive for you, 100%. If instead you say, how can I afford to live in a gorgeous place that's gorgeous all year round next to the beach, next to the mountains? How can I afford to do that? Well, maybe I'd VA house hack. I know somebody who used their VA loan, put zero down on a house in San Diego. It was a fourplex. He lives in one of them with his wife, rents the other 3 out, and lives for free. The other renters pay his mortgage. So he got it for zero down. It's a multi-million-dollar house now. He bought it for like $1.1 million, right? And he used the VA loan, put $0 into it, lived in one side, rented out the other 3. And now not only does it pay for his mortgage, but he's built up about $500,000 in equity, a little over $500,000 in equity. And he's lived in it for 4 years.
Just living.
That is, and he was
living in his house
there, just working out, right? And so that's an example, one of many, many, many examples of somebody that is living the dream life in Southern California, but didn't put any money into it. Okay?
Yeah.
So there's a million ways to do it if your mindset is such that, how can I afford to do this? How can I do this? As opposed to, oh, I just can't. With you said, okay, it doesn't make sense to invest in rental properties in where I live in California because the numbers don't work.
And
that's
tried.
not an emotional decision. That's not fear-based. That is rational, numbers-driven. Okay?
I've tried over and over again.
Oh, yeah, because you want to, right?
Yes.
Naturally, you want to buy something close by you because that's just human nature, right? But then you go all the way to the other side of the country, to Florida, hurricane-prone, right? Like a place you don't know very well, a place that you're not physically located at. Do you know how many people seize up that are listening to this right now are seizing up and being like, I could never invest in something that I can't see. I could never invest in a place that I've never been, right? What happens if fill in all the fear factors, right? And then they let that stop them. Another thing you just said, I'm making $200,000 a year. I don't have any money in the bank. I don't have any money. What do you think the number one reason people give me for why they can't get started investing in real estate is?
Don't have enough money.
Don't have enough money.
Yeah.
I don't have enough money, right? That's the biggest problem. I don't have enough money. You didn't have money.
Nope.
Right? And on and on and on. But you didn't let any of that stuff stop you. That's profound, man. Like, help me understand that. Like, you had to have felt fear. Drea had to have felt fear.
For sure.
You're spending this money that you barely have on this unknown, untested product. You didn't even know who I was, right? We'd never met before. She had never met me, right? And I can tell you, my wife, whenever I'm doing something new and she doesn't know anything about what it is, she has a lot of questions.
For sure.
Rightfully so, because it's her life too. So talk me through that journey.
I don't know. That's tough because I don't know. In my mind, it's very simple. Where I knew, like I told you, I had followed the path. Like I followed your normal path. They tell you, you grow up, you go to a great college, and I went to a great college, Air Force Academy, not like some crappy one like the Naval Academy. Got my MBA. I got a good job at a great company. And then I got a better job at a middle market company. So I followed that path, but I wasn't wealthy. Like we weren't flying first class to places. Like we still wanted to do things that money got in the way of. And so I knew like there has to be a better way. And the crazy thing, so I first read Rich Dad Poor Dad in high school. My stepdad gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad to read in high school, and he was like, you need to read this because this is the way to go. And it's funny because my dad is super conservative, works for GE, like does the 401k thing, very conservative in his own investments and with finances. And my stepdad has always been more on the side of like that, more of a dreamer, right? So he was a loan officer for as long as I've known him, for 30 years, and always knew like real estate was the way to get in, but never took the action paired with it. So I was exposed to both, but I never saw it. I saw like what debt looks like, and I saw what foreclosures look like. I saw what, being conservative looks like, but I never saw the actual fruits of what investing in real estate could do, but I did know that world existed. And I think I started to see it more when I was in that COO position, because I was running this company, and the guy that owned it, most of his wealth came from real estate because he owned the property that the company was on, and his books were set up so that the company paid rent to his company.
Yeah.
So he's making money from, producing like moldings and doors and stuff. But in reality, he was making more money by paying himself rent because he owned the land. And I saw that. Like, we were like going through the P&L statements, and I saw it, and I was like, this dude's making $1 million a year by paying himself rent from his company. And I don't know if that just clicked for me or what it was, but I was like, okay, I was a year in. I said, all right, now it's time to figure out how else to climb. And that's what I wrote. I told you, like, when I wrote, you have to write an essay to get into to White Feather Accelerator, not like a huge one, just a little paragraph on why you want to. And I said, I know I have to climb somewhere. I don't know where that is exactly. And so I reached out for help.
Have you gone back and read that recently?
I have. I
mean, just I don't want to spoil the fun, but what you've accomplished in the last year, I've never seen. I've never seen it in 15 years of doing this and all kinds of stories, right? It's never happened. And we'll talk in detail about that, because you realigned my expectations of what's possible. You actually made me reshoot one of the videos, because one of the videos is on wholesaling, and I talk about what's possible in wholesaling, and you shattered that, right? It wasn't even relevant anymore. So I had to reshoot it, and I used you as an example, and you're part of the upcoming course, right? You haven't seen it because right? But people that go through the course now, they see your case study, and they study it because it redefined what was possible. And it also redefined what was possible in your life, and also in a huge portion of my business. But then when you were writing that, you were just like, I don't know, right? I just don't know. I feel that something needs to change. I feel like it's possible, but I don't know what it looks like. And there's all kinds of doubt as to this could be a waste of time and a waste of money, right? So, like, what do you think when you read that now?
I think, so I still feel the way that I did when I applied.
That makes sense.
Because, one, we are just crashing our own ideas of what's possible weekly. So when I left my job, Dre and I sat down and said, you know what? All right, I want to figure out how to make $10,000 a month. Like, not a huge goal. I think that's super attainable. Let's do that. And this all started because we did Ocean's 11, made $240,000 like super quickly. But when I really looked into it, I was like, that's the $10K a month was kind of stupid, honestly. Like, that was a bad goal.
What?
I want to figure out how to make $100,000 a month in wholesaling, because like I saw what I've been doing now. Like, we did one giant wholesale deal, and I'll give myself credit for 11 because there's 11 homes. So say 11 wholesale deals. But what I've been doing lately is just trying to consume as much information about other people wholesaling and what they're doing, because I've realized that the biggest players in that game are making like $200,000 a month doing that.
Yeah.
And
it's easy.
Yeah.
The big boys are doing it easily. And we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah.
So you're getting way
Oh,
ahead
sorry.
of
So
yourself.
let me come back to what your original question was. So the thing that I had spoke about or wrote about in my essay was that my goal, no matter what I've done, has always been to show other people what's possible just through example. Because like I said, I didn't grow up with much. When I wanted to apply to college, like, I was told good luck with that because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
And so I enlisted in the Air Force to pay for college.
Oh, wow.
And, I had no idea that my life was going to go down this path. But when I was enlisted, and they were like, I said, oh, I want to go to the Air Force Academy. They're like, yeah, you can't do that. That's really, no one can do that. And so, yeah. And so actually they said, you can't have debt and you can't have tattoos, is what my, my drill instructor told me. And I was like, well, I guess I'm shit out of luck then. But I ended up going to the Air Force Academy, right? And so then I'm in the Air Force Academy trying to figure out what I want to do, and I want to go into special warfare because, one, like, I realized I'm a very team-minded person, and I wanted to be on the ground with the guys. But two, that's not easy. Like there's a 75% washout rate in that pipeline. And so
This is also during combat, right? This was while the war in Afghanistan and Iraq were still going on.
Still moving.
Yeah.
And so I went into special warfare again, like show people what's possible. And I'm not like the super athletic dude. I just don't know how to quit, right? And so same deal. Left there, got a great job, left that one, got an even better job. And so my goal has been the same this whole way through. And Dre and I were talking about this on the way here, is I have a really, really good close friend. His name's Rich. And he has a very similar upbringing to me. But we met when I was at TAC-P because he was one of my airmen. Mm-hmm. And so I think he's 25, 26 years old. He's staff sergeant now, like awesome at his job. But every time I do these things, or like every time we move this needle, I think about him, and I think about like, I am trying to show this dude who's now one of my best friends what's possible in his life for him. And what's cool is like him and his fiance, they have the exact same mindset as us. And so like he sees it, we talk about it, and he's like, oh, I can do that. And he just captures him. Mm-hmm. And that's my mindset today still. Like that was my mindset when I applied. And so when I applied, I was like, all right, I need to figure this out. What else is above being an executive in a cool company? Mm-hmm. And now my mindset is, okay, how do I push this so far that it just shatters like the idea of what's possible for all these people?
That makes a lot of sense, because I was trying to figure out what's driving you. And I was talking to Kimberly about this. I think we talk with our wives about each other quite a bit, I would imagine. I know I do.
That's right.
Yeah. And so we were talking about it. She was like, well, what is driving him, right? Because the obvious Ocean's 11, we just very, very quickly, and we'll talk about it more in detail if you'd like, but the story's been told a bunch. So you go find, a motivated seller that has 11 brand new townhomes in Orlando Beach, Florida, beautiful, right next to the ocean, through a wild, should be turned into a docuseries twist of fate. You were able to get it locked in for over $2 million discount.
Yes.
For the portfolio. 2.3, I believe, right? Some what's 300,000 among friends, right? So around a $2 million discount. And then you come to me and say, hey, I've got this locked in. Yeah, it was a $2 million discount, but it was still like a $5 million purchase price, right?
Yeah.
And you were like, I'm a little short. I don't have the whole 5 million. I need
I've
5
got
million.
some.
I have some, but I need around 5 million. And you were like, so what do we do? You told me, you threw it back at me, because I told you, I said, just make offers, bro, make offers. Stop being a bitch. Just make offers, right? And you go out there and you make this offer and you get this tiger by the tail. And then you'd send to me the holy shit email. Like there is nothing that makes more money than holy shit emails in White Feather. And that is when somebody presses the I believe button, they go out there and they make these crazy offers and they get it locked up. And then they're like, okay, now what do we do? Right? Because when they make offers and they get them locked up like that, the value is insane. And as long as you have the knowledge to take it down, you have the network to be able to support you with the assets you need, and then you take that action, it's all possible. So you send me this whole shit email, or I think you called, and you're like, hey, I got this thing locked up. And I'm like, okay, now we've got a deal. Let's look at this. Obviously, you can't take it down because you don't have the money. But we've got a whole network of people that are just screaming for good deals all the time. Why don't we float this out there and see who's interested? So I send one email and we get 100 people on a Zoom call the next week. 100 people, right?
Yeah.
And other people sending me emails like, because all we said was, hey, we've got these brand new properties. They're cash flow properties with tons of equity, and we need to figure out what to do with them, right? And so we ended up deciding, long story short, on that call to wholesale. And they basically begged us to wholesale these deals.
51 people asked for wholesale.
51 people asked. There are 11 properties. 51 people said, why don't you give yourself $50,000, $60,000 for each of these deals as a wholesale fee and then sell it to us? And each one of these was at about $160,000 discount, $160,000 of free equity. So basically what they were saying is, you take 50, 60, something like that, give us $100,000 discount and we'll buy these from you, right? And these are all people that needed to bring $150K to the table, which you didn't have. So let me just frame this, right? You are at the helm of this ship that is getting ready to ship off 11 properties to people and saying you need to be able to sling 150K at this in order to get qualified to take this down, right? And get financing. And you're going to ship 50K each, right? And I say 50 to 60 because there were 5 or 6 of them that were 60 grand, a few that were 50 grand, and one that was 100 grand.
One was
Remember that?
That's my favorite story though, because you tried so hard not to pair that one.
Not to sell it.
Because,
Kimberly got mad at me for selling that one because she wanted it because it was a corner lot and it facing the ocean, and she wanted us to buy it.
And you thought when you threw out 100K, they would say, no, that's not worth it. So then you could keep it.
You know, because that one was what, a $250,000 discount,
that's
right?
sold for 800K, like a same property.
So it was valued at 800K. You had it locked up for like 500.
Yep.
Something like that, right? Yep. I mean, insane. Who can do this, right? And so in a newbie, a guy who's never done anything before, and you're sitting here like this, and you're like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And so I was like, and Kimberly was like, no, let's just take it down and we can give Justin the 50K or whatever, and let's just buy this ourselves. And I said, well, let me just at least see, because there are 51 people that want these deals. So I was like, all right, guys, this one Kimberly does not want me to get rid of. So if you want it, it's going to be $100,000 wholesale fee. And Bobby's like, yes, me. He calls me. He's like, in the car, he's like, listen. He's like, I'll give you the 100K. Just give me that unit, right? And I was like, Bobby, Kimberly's going to kill me. Do you know how I don't know if she wants me to tell this story. Do you know how I got her to agree to that? Sure. I said, I will give you $25,000 cash with the one stipulation is you can't spend it on anything that is necessary. It has to be like YSL purses or something, right? And she ended up like a couple weeks ago in Nashville, bought $10,000 worth of YSL purses. She still has 15 left, right? So she ended up being like, okay, let's do this. So I shipped, when I was in Guatemala, I transferred $25,000 over to her from that. Yeah. So anyway,
I did the same thing. We were in Hawaii when this all closed, and we went out, and I told Trey, I was like, you need to just go buy whatever it is you want to. Like, we're going to walk down Hanalei, which is now my favorite town I've ever been to. I said, if you want a dress, buy it. Like, I don't care about the price tag today. Like, you're just going to go buy everything that you want on this. And I actually had to force her because she doesn't like to spend lots of money. And I was like, you want that dress? You like? Buy it. Like, get this.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's funny. It's interesting. And this is really, really powerful. Like, Drea she cares about your family. She cares about you. She cares about your life together, right? She's not somebody who, from what I've seen, she's not somebody who's like, I just need the hottest new thing. I just need the most expensive new thing, right? No. Kimberly's not like that either. And so I gave her one time, I remember we did this big deal several years ago, and I was like, I want to get Kimberly like excited about this, right? To like, cause it's just more fun when you can share things with the person you love. And so I was like, here's our business credit card, right? There is literally no limit. For your birthday, go down to Coronado Island, which is where she was having her gathering. And I said, just go shopping. And she goes, well, what's my limit? I said, there literally is, I said, I think the limit on the card is like 58,000. And she started laughing, right? And I was like, but if you hit that, let me know, I'll pay it. And then, right, there's literally no limit. Do you know how much money she spent?
I'm going to say $400.
$1,600. I had, but she, $1,600, and I had to make her do that, right? And she was, because it just, that's not the most important thing to her.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, right? But it's kind of an interesting thing, right? I grew up on food stamps, right? And WIC. So and I still remember that. I still vividly remember like going into the grocery store and knowing exactly where the milk and the cheese and the bread was in the WIC aisle, right? It's women, infants, and children. It's like a government program that I don't think is around anymore. But I remember that. I remember every single time we would go with a cart full of groceries, they would scan them, and invariably every time my mom would run out of money before they scanned all the groceries, and so we'd have to take some back every single time, right? I remember putting $1.73 of gas into our car, not because that's how much would fit, but because that's how much money we had in the world, literally. Like, we had no bank accounts or anything like that. It was all cash. And so I remember those things. And then, you know, you come into, like with the Ocean's 11 deal, you and I had a verbal agreement, right? I was like, hey, listen, I will help you wholesale these things. We'll take care of it all, and we'll just split the proceeds 50-50, right? It was a verbal agreement, right? So we're talking about $500,000 of proceeds. Actually, it was like 550.
Yep.
That you just trusted that I would give you because you wrote it up in White Feather's name and you had it sent to my bank account. Okay, the reason I say that is because that is trust. That's an insane amount of trust that is not insane in our community.
No.
It's normal. It's expected in our community.
But if I explain this to somebody else, like, hey, buddy and I met in February, and I told him I was going to send him $500,000. Please send me $250,000 back.
Right, verbally.
That itself
not
sounds
even in writing,
nuts, yeah.
verbally,
Yeah.
right? So not really enforceable by law.
No.
And here's just a public service announcement. Don't do that to most people, right? Only if you have an insane amount of trust. And here, this will make sense, right? White Feather is a group of military and veterans, right, who work together to build financial freedom for themselves and their families, okay? And, for Kimberly and I started White Feather a long time ago. There's lots of people on the team right now, but for better or for worse, I'm kind of the face of it, right? What do you think? Like, for us, the hallmark of this community is the velocity of trust. It is, you do the right thing. When you give somebody your word, you follow through with that word. One, because that's what you should do and it's the right thing to do. And most of the people in the military do subscribe to that.
Yep.
Two, it's a wolf pack, bro. If you don't, how quickly do you think you're going to get torn apart? Right? How quickly do you think White Feather folds? And all of a sudden, my dream crumbles if I don't honor my word to you.
Yeah.
Even once, right? So now it makes sense, right? Now it makes sense why somebody will screw. And that's writ large across White Feather. Everybody knows it. And if they don't know it, listen to this, right? And it's an unspoken thing.
That's
it doesn't
for
have
sure.
to be spoken
For
because
sure.
we're men of honor and women of honor, right? And so, but nevertheless, we're also humans. And so how do you combat human nature? You have accountability in place and you have extreme transparency. If somebody is not willing to tell you how much money they're making on a deal, don't do deal with them. Just it's easy. I don't care how much money I'm going to make. If I don't feel like you're being honest with me, I will not do a deal with you, right? And so you were extremely transparent, but you knew without question that I would give you that money,
Yep.
right?
No question.
It wasn't even a question. And so, I remember when the deals all went through and the wires started coming in and it was like 89,000 here and 96,000 here. I look at my checking account and I normally don't keep a ton of money in the operational account. So I had like, I don't know, 50 grand or something in there. And then like you messaged me on Slack and you were like, hey, for the deals closed, this deal, right? So the wires should be coming in. So I look at my account that had 50 grand in it, a few minutes before, and it had almost 300,000 in it. Right. And I was like, okay, that's a little bit of a, right. And so all these deals came in and I remember driving down the coast and, you have Navy Federal, I have Navy Federal. And so I said, how do I transfer? I need to transfer him almost $300,000. And I know you can't do that on an ACH and, wires are like cumbersome with Navy. And so I called him and I was like, hey, how do I do this? And they're like, well, is he a Navy Federal member? I was like, yeah. They're like, okay, how much is it? $322,964.12. They're like, okay, it's done. I was like, what? They're like, yeah, it's done. And then I texted you and I was like, check your account.
Yep.
Right. And so what happened then? When I texted you that and then you looked at your account, what happened then?
So we were in Hawaii. We were in the hotel room getting ready to do something. I forget what exactly. But you texted me, look at my account. So I pulled out my laptop and there I saw more money than I had ever seen in my life. Ever. I remember the first time I saw $1,000 in my bank account. Like that was a cool moment in itself. But here is over $100,000 in my bank account. And so I called you. I said, but I'm just going to tell you, this is the most money I've ever seen. Like, I know it exists, but I've never seen this much money.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy, right? And it seems, and again, we're being very honest and transparent about the inner workings of this because I want people to understand that this is not magic. It's not magic.
It's not.
It's not, and it's not even that hard. I won't say it's easy, but it's not complex. Right?
No.
And it also can happen with people who grew up on food stamps and people who've never seen $100,000 before, right? Like it can happen. This is America. There's literally nobody asked you what your father does for a living. Nobody asked you what race you are. Nobody asked you if you're a man or a woman. Nobody in that bank cares.
Nope.
They said, hey, this guy made a bunch of money and now he has a bunch of money, right? And so that's the beautiful thing. So I love this country so much is like, it's not only am I not being held back, not only do I not have a ceiling because of how I grew up and my family name, it actually adds to my story.
Yeah.
People are more interested in my story because of the adversity that I was born into, right? That's America. It flips that dynamic on its head. So all you have to do is believe that something like this is possible, surround yourself with the right people, right? And then take action, right?
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but it's kind of off topic, on topic. When it comes to people who grow up with adversity or any type of adversity, the only like statistic point that has shown of somebody being able to get through like a special forces pipeline or a Navy SEALs buds is someone who grew up with that adversity.
Interesting.
It's the only thing. Everything else, like, doesn't matter if you're like some track star or whatever,
Right.
the only point that has shown like this person is more likely to be successful in this type of world is that someone who grew up with it.
Wow.
And I'll bet on it for that reason. So like I have a property manager partner in Daytona Beach managing all of the properties on the ground there. And he didn't like have a lot, but he grew up with adversity. And I recognized that when I met him first. And we like came through some stumbles, and we recently went out there and I took a walk with him on the beach and just had a heart to heart. And I was like, look, I'll tell you flat out, I bet on you because you grew up with this adversity.
Wow.
Because I recognize that somebody who grows up with adversity only goes two ways. There's literally only two ways that this will pan out. One, you're going to be so pissed off about what you grew up with that it is going to fuel you to do amazing things and work your ass off because you don't want to be there. And, anger can only get you so far, and we can touch on that later, and I learned that.
But it helps.
Yeah, it does. It does, for sure. It fuels you.
If you're full of pain, yes.
It will fuel you for far. But the other way that you go is that you blame your entire life on that past. And so I'll bet on it, like, because it's 50-50, sure, but that other 50% will push people so far.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell you, I love being that person for those people who grew up with some sort of adversity, whatever it is. Like, everyone has their own adversity, their own story. I love being that person who shows, like, you can do this.
Yeah. Okay. This makes a lot more sense now why you did not just kick back and just kind of ride on the Ocean's 11 train, right? Because I always felt like, so you went right in from Ocean's 11 and you helped facilitate, another multi-$100,000 wholesale deal that we're in the middle of right now, right? And now I put you in charge of a team, and you, more importantly, willingly, graciously, eagerly accepted the responsibility of being in charge of the Tiger team. And now you're in the middle of building a course and figuring out, ways to create $100,000, $200,000 a month of fees by teaching other people how to do it. So that's that kind of all of that stuff. And plus you run a property management company that, by the way, I think is probably making your 10K a month is somewhere around there.
It's making good money.
So your side gig, which, by the way, everybody's raving about, not just Dave, everybody's like, Justin's like the greatest property manager like ever. Right. And so, I told you about that. I was like, us executing this Ocean's 11 deal, it's just the start. I will not be with you after this point because I've got my stuff to do. Your success and your reputation will depend on how you run those properties. Yeah. Right. Because we were sitting there and 11 people were buying these properties. None of them live in Florida, or I think one of them does. Right. But they weren't going to manage them themselves. And so we could turn it over to a professional, experienced, large property management company, or you can give them all to this brand new guy who just formed his company like last week, doesn't have any idea what he's doing.
While he's Googling how to run
ask ChatGPT, how do I run a property management company, right? But do we turn them all over? And I think every single one of them turned their properties over to you, right?
I was super unsure in that moment, and you and I had a call about it, and I called you and said, hey, would it be better?
Sure.
Because I negotiated with a property management company. I negotiated down to, usually short-term rental property management companies do 22%, 20%. I negotiated down to a 15% fee with a company that was veteran owned. And I was like, okay.
It's kind of like a perfect fit.
Right.
And I personally was like, we probably should do that. Because
and I called
it. But you don't have any experience, and you can't manufacture that. Experience has to come through doing it. And so I was like, and I'm not going to lie to you, this is a risk. This is a risk that you could screw this up. Right?
Yeah.
And like, we care enough about each other and we respect each other enough that we have to be able to be that honest with each other. And you even said, I remember, you're like, I don't think that I want to just be in property management as well. I think I want to just do this wholesale, maybe do, right? So you were teeter-tottering as well.
For sure. I wasn't sure. Like I was telling you earlier, I am an introvert. And so the idea of having to talk to people on Airbnb or just talk to all 11 of these people who are buying properties all the time, that didn't sit well with me. And I knew that I would not only, like I said, I'd have to talk to 2 different people and whatever team we're running there. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can do that. Like, and I've never run properties before. We've never run Airbnbs before. We own 2 Airbnbs that we like help run, but that's it. And so I was really faced with that. Well, like, should I do this? Is it really the best thing for all 11 of these people? I know it'll bring us income. You know, we were considering leaving my job at that time. So like, yes, that'd be good money for us, but is that the best thing for all 11 people? And I didn't know.
Right.
And so I asked all 11 of them, hey, I've got these 2 property management companies that I think would be a good fit. I can also put you in touch with our own cleaning teams and stuff if you want to self-manage, or I can manage them for you. Like, what is it that you would prefer? And every single one of them said, yes, like, we want you to manage this. And so then I had to learn. I was like, all right, we're in it. We're going to do this now.
Man, it's like, that's so counter to what you hear about whenever people say about how to sell or how to, you know, like, this is how you close people and this is how you da-da-da. It's like, fake it till you make it, right? You hear that all the time, fake it till you make it. You did the opposite of fake it. You were like, I am going to tell you exactly what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what the risks are, the opposite of faking it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not even asking for your trust. I'm asking what you think the best thing to do is.
Well, I care about these people. Like, actually, I've never met any of these people in person.
Yeah.
But like, when you look at my roster of who we have, like who we're managing homes for, you know, you got Pat and Kayla, who I went through the course with. They were in my group, my small group, who I talk to every week.
Yeah.
Same thing with Justin and Melanie. Yeah. Like, they're in my small group. Like, these are people that I talk to once a week for 6 months. Then you've got, you know, I'm a triathlete. I'm like doing Ironmans. We have a professional Ironman in this mix.
The fastest American to ever run.
His world record hold Ironman.
His wife is the #1 triathlete, female triathlete.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I've got this roster of people who I don't want to let down.
Yeah.
And so I have to put it all out there and say, look, this is what's going on. And we continue to do that. I sent out the August update yesterday. Hey, look, we lost a couple bookings because of the hurricane. This is why, you know, bookings went down this month. This is what the trajectory you're going to see. And that's all I can do is I can give you all full honesty, and I know that I'll go full speed in making it work. But I didn't have a clue what we were doing. I've learned a lot in 2 months. I'll tell you that much.
That's awesome. It's awesome. And I could tell you that that's how you do. I mean, I have this thing that I say all the time that sometimes I even say it to myself, but especially to new people. Everything's figure-outable, right? Everything is figure-outable. Like, okay, so let me just tell you, I want to hit on the adversity thing here in a second, so remind me. But before we do that, the Ocean's 11 deal shattered everything. We gave away over $1 million worth of equity, well over $1 million worth of equity to investors. We have brand new properties, cash flowing, right? But we still made, it was like $550,000 that we split between the two of us. So it was like 275 or whatever, 275K each. The biggest wholesale that I'd ever heard of before that was a friend of mine named Kenny, who bought a piece of land up in Monterey, and this was a decade ago. Bought a piece of land up in Monterey, very, very good area. He got it at a discount, listed it on Craigslist for $100,000 more than what he bought it for, and he got a $100,000 wholesale fee. When I went through the Rich Dad course way back in the day, they taught wholesaling, and the first deal I ever did was a wholesale. Kimberly and I did a wholesale, the first time I ever did. They would tell us, in a wholesale, you can typically make between $1,000 and $5,000 on a wholesale. Don't expect to get $5,000 every time. Some cases, in some of the more expensive areas, you can make upwards of $10,000 on a wholesale. But really, you're shooting for the $2,000 to $5,000 range, and that's going to be good wholesale, right? And then, so I taught that in the class, right? This is what you aim for. My first wholesale deal was like I made $3,000 on one and $15,000 on the other. It was a combination, so $18,000 total. And I thought we were rock stars, right? And then I'd hear Kenny's, and it's like, okay, $100,000 is technically possible. So I would say that, and I said that for years, taught hundreds of people. When you do wholesales, you shoot for $5,000. You can get upwards of 10. I know a guy who did 100 one time. Then you come along And your first deal is a $550,000 wholesale that could have been more. We talk about this. What is the most, this is a powerful point too. What's the most profitable thing we could have done with those properties?
Okay, kept them.
Kept them. If we had kept them.
And we figured out how to keep them.
We figured out how to keep them. I got a verbal okay from private money, that the guy that I knew, and we knew how to bring the down payment down and, and hold them and keep them ourselves. And if we had done that, we would have kept $2.3 million of equity and split it 50-50. You would have gone in 2 months from having a few $1,000s in the bank to a millionaire.
I'll take it. We'll have some debt to millionaire.
Okay, debt. Negative. So negative.
Negative money.
Negative money to being a millionaire.
Yes.
And we talked about this.
Yep.
And we talked about this on the call.
Yep.
We were like, hey, there's 100 of you guys on this call. We want to talk to you about what we're doing. We talked about Justin and me keeping this, and he will become an instant millionaire, right? That's a story.
Yeah.
But you talked me out of it.
Yes.
Because, well, from my perspective, it didn't fit. It wasn't hard to talk me out of it because it didn't fit with the mission of White Feather, which is to help all of our members build financial freedom. That is us making the most money possible, which is not the mission of White Feather.
Right.
Right? What about you, from your perspective? Did you even talk to Drea about it? Be like, hey, I could make $1 million. I'm instead going to make $250,000. What do you think, babe?
So I'll tell you, that was an easier conversation than signing up for the course.
Wow. Wow.
That may have been a 2 or 3 day conversation at the dinner table. And that's it. Because, so I'm still new in the accelerator. This was 4 months into the accelerator that we get this under contract. And you're right. So we're faced with a decision. Do we get $1 million in equity and, splitting 11 beachside homes? And I love the beach. That is my happy place in the world.
And they're cash flowing.
Yeah, cash flowing,
in
like
an area
beautiful,
that's appreciating.
Short-term rentals, yes. Or do we wholesale them where we'll still make a lot of money, but make like $270,000, right? So that conversation was much easier because when we talked about it, who does making $1 million really benefit? Like, that benefits me and that benefits you and nobody else. And we had just started seeing this ball rolling. We had purchased a long-term rental. We got the 2 short-term rentals. And now we're doing this wholesale. And I said, I think $1 million is going to come. Like, I don't actually think that's something that's a really hard goal or something that's like far out there. Like, that's going to happen. So I'm not really too held up on this idea of taking $1 million right now. But if we pump $1 million into this community, like, one, quite honestly, like, that is just going to rocket propel me into a place like within White Feather that we can do really great things. And that, like, momentum and trajectory, I think will be so much better because, one, we're giving away $1 million to everybody and then creating this story of this huge wholesale. But more importantly, we're going to start this wave that if we just keep rocking down this path, $1 million is going to come. Like, it's going to happen. And she agreed. She was like, yeah, that wasn't a hard conversation at all.
That is, man, I just want to give, again, I don't know her very well yet. I've met her a couple of times. I just know what you've talked about. But I don't know how many wives would be like, sure, let's do that. Let's go ahead and give away $1 million because I believe in the future. One, I believe in, improving a lot more people's lives than just one, right? But it's also a savvy business move. Let's talk about that for a second, right? It's brilliant because you become this like pseudo celebrity within White Feather, right? Like, everybody knows about the Ocean's 11 deal and everybody's like, oh, and why wouldn't they, right? It's sick, right? 2, you become known for what you are, which is a generous person. You're transparent, action-oriented, but generous, right? And so what comes along with that is a higher degree of trust. And that is why it's not terribly surprising that everybody wanted you to manage their properties, right? Because that's the kind of person that you are. And you also are somebody who will learn what you need to learn, right? Because throughout this process, there were a million questions that you had.
Oh.
And I was like, bro, everything's figure outable. Let's figure it out. So you talked to tons of it, right? So you showed the willingness to do all that and to learn what you needed to learn. And because of your emphasis on showing people what's possible, inspiring them to do that, and then helping them do that, I wanted to hit on that as well. You're not a transaction coordinator. You're not somebody that goes out and hunts for deals and does those deals and makes money and that's all you do, right? You're changing lives. And whenever you can posture yourself like that, you can turn it into as many businesses as you want. That's what I've done with White Feather. The central mission is to help people I care about, military veterans, people that serve this great country. I care about them. And all I do is figure out different ways to help them build financial freedom. And those are the 4 different 7-figure businesses I've created.
And I think you would probably agree with me at the core of this. I do believe that the more that you put out into the world, like the more good you put into the world, the more you're going to get back.
100%. 100%. I call it the fireplace analogy. Whenever you meet new people, right, think of it like a fireplace. So it's absurd to look at an empty fireplace and say, once you start burning, I'll put some firewood in you, right? No, you add the fuel first, you add the firewood first, and then you expect the heat. So in relationships, whenever I meet somebody new, 100% of the time, I'm always in my mind interested in their story, in what it is that they're doing, and I'm constantly searching for ways that I can add value in their life without anything expected in return. And you have to train that. Yeah. Right? It doesn't come naturally. Human beings, by nature, we're like, what's in it for me?
Where you can fit or where you can get.
How can I get something? I mean, that's human nature. So when you feel that way, don't feel bad. Like, that's human nature. We all start that way, but you can train your brain as a neural net. You could train it however you want to train it. If you train it to see abundance, you'll see abundance. If you train it to see fear, you'll see fear. When you go into a new relationship, and I'm an introvert too, we should hit on that as well. Almost every single super successful person that I know is an introvert that has the ability to speak in public and has the ability to make relationships. Why is that, right? We'll talk about that. But when you go into a new relationship, you can train yourself to constantly be looking for ways to add value. And when you do that enough with the right people, you can text somebody and say, hey, I need 500 grand, and it's there, right? And you saw that, right?
I've seen it.
Remember that, right? Remember that? What was it? You needed 100 grand.
I needed 100 grand.
Right?
Yep. They needed 100 grand because we were trying to furnish all 11 homes, all 11 like 3-bedroom, brand new gorgeous homes. So you can't even furnish these with like cheap things.
Right. So it's expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive. We're trying to furnish all 11 homes ourselves before we closed or before we got any money. And so I had maxed out all of our credit cards. I got a new credit card for the business and maxed that out. Hey.
Oh my God.
And then I called you and I said, hey buddy, I put about $150K on my credit cards. But I need about $100,000 more to finish furnishing these. And you said, you put $150K on your credit cards to furnish the homes? I said, yeah, well, I want to get all the furniture there so that when they close, they can get set up and then they can go live.
It was so they could start making money faster.
Right.
No one asked you to do that. No one expected you to do that, by the way. But you wanted people to start making money faster.
Well, it's logical to me. Like you close, if you close and all the furniture's there, then they can get set up and then we can go live. And
okay, bro.
my dreams of how that would work were wrong. They're flat out wrong. Because my idea was, I was like, I'll get all the furniture there before the 7th. We close on the 7th. It's a Friday. We'll inventory it by Monday. In 2 weeks, these will all be set up and we'll be ready to run. That's not how that happened. but that was my goal, and I needed 100 grand to bridge the gap.
Yeah, I remember that. And so you were like, hey, I need this, da-da-da. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, it isn't about having money. It's about having access to money. That's it. And so I was like, okay. And I've got 4 or 5 people, depending on, what's happening with their businesses, that I consider my personal ATMs, right? And it's people that I have such a strong relationship with that they know if something happens with the money that I borrow from them, I'll give them one of my houses. Like, I'm not, like, no kidding. Hell will freeze over before I do not pay you back, right? And they know that. Because it's more about me than it is them. It's more about me than it is the money, right? It's about me maintaining my integrity with myself. And so they know that. And so I texted Dave, one of my great friends, And Dave's got some pretty deep pockets. And I was like, hey, you know, Justin, well, actually, I texted him. I said, hey, Dave, can you send me $100,000? And he was like, yeah, what's up? Right? He said yes. And then he said, and then just out of curiosity, like if I had said, I don't have time to talk about it, just send it over, he would have done it.
Yeah.
But he was like, yeah, what's up? And I was like, well, Justin's trying to stage all of these things like before they even close escrow, before he gets any money. So he's maxed out his credit cards and he's trying to get it all done. He was like, that crazy son of a bitch. All right, fine. He goes, let me take care of it. So he calls you, right? And then what was that conversation like?
Calls me for a whole 2-3 seconds. And granted, like from my perspective, you got to remember, I'm still new in this course. And so the stories that I hear about people are nuts. Like you hear about the DaCostas who create $100 million in short-term rentals, or you hear about Dave who purchased a $5 million quad in Coronado with his teammates. And so to me, like these people are like rock stars, and I'm just like here in class trying to make deals and learn.
Yeah.
And so then I get a call from Dave, and he's like, "Hey man, I heard you need $100,000." I said, "Yep, yeah, I do." He said, "All right, cool. Just send me your wire information." And I was like, "Well, do you want that at like 2% or like you want points back?" He's like, "We'll figure that out later."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay." He said, "All right, man, have a good day."
Yeah.
And that's it. And I sent him my bank account information that I checked 5 times to make sure it was right before I sent it to him.
I've been there.
And then the next day I had $100,000 in the bank.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and the reason, again, it's not magic. The reason that Dave would send you that is because he knew that if for whatever reason, maybe you died and somebody who took over your estate said, screw it, I'm not paying anybody back. Dave knows I cover it.
Yeah.
No matter what. And when you have that type of trust that is only born out of wild, like crazy transparency and a sense of integrity that is, I would rather die than lose my honor, right? And you find that in the military, right? One of the reasons that I love so much having this community is because there are things that we can kind of take for granted a lot of times that, at least, you know, I've never really existed or, you know, operated in the civilian world, but like from what I hear, that's not very common in the civilian world.
Yeah.
Right? It can be found amongst groups of people that are really tight knit, but in the military, you find it pretty frequently.
Very
right?
fast too.
Yeah. And so, you know, I mean, anyway, like what I was telling you before, the way that the way you're able to do these crazy deals mostly is by having a network where there's a huge high degree of trust.
For sure.
Right? But I wanted to, before I forget about the adversity thing, you said something that just resonated. My chills went down my spine whenever you were saying it. And you were saying when somebody grows up in adversity, they can respond to it one of 2 ways.
Yes.
Right? They can blame their external factors and blame the world and use that as the excuse pit for why they are not living the life of their dreams. Or they can use it as fuel. They can let it piss them off. They can let it drive. It can be their why. I say to people all the time, when you're trying to figure out your why, it's pretty easy to find. It's that thing in your life that you would do anything to protect or do anything to kill. And sometimes it's both.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And if you have, like, as humans, we're motivated for either the pursuit of pleasure or mitigating and getting rid of pain. Pain works better.
Yep.
At least in the short term.
For sure.
So if you have a massive amount of pain or trauma or abuse or shame or fear or any of that type of stuff in your life, which most people do, you're welcome. That is God putting that in your life that gives you the ability to use that as rocket fuel to build a better life, to build your dreams, to make your impact. And I always remember the story of the twin boys, right, who grew up with an abusive alcoholic father.
Yep.
And one of them went on to become a doctor and have a family and a beautiful, fruitful life. And the other went in and out of prison for years until he eventually committed suicide. And when they would ask them, what turned you into the man you are today? Both of them said the exact same thing. I grew up with an abusive alcoholic father.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it. And that's a parable, but you can use that like to look at everything you experience. And this is what I do. I use it to look at everything I experienced in my life, you know, from my dad also was an abusive alcoholic father. And there's all of the things that come along with growing up in poverty, like not having health insurance. So you just deal with shit whenever you get hurt, right? With not having dental insurance. So you have cavities all over the place, right? And you got, right? And not being able to, we didn't have electricity, so we didn't have a washing machine. So I would constantly, when I went to school, I would be wearing the same jeans I wore for 3-4 days in a row, and they're dirty and they smell. And so I was the kid that smelled, right? You know how hard it is to ask a girl to go out on a date whenever you're the kid that smells? It's impossible, right? And so you're embarrassed and ashamed. And that's why I didn't date, because I knew they'd say no, right? And growing up like that, it hurts. It sucks. And, you can either say, you know what, like life sucks. And, I was taught to hate rich people, right? Because
everybody is. Everyone is taught
right?
to
Rich people are, actually, that's fair enough. That's kind of still a thing, right?
Yes.
And so it's rich people are greedy and they're evil and you don't want anything that's why we never talk about money in this house. And I'm like, well, shoot, maybe we should have talked about money a little more, right? Because I've eaten beans and rice for dinner 5 days in a row because you can buy them in 5-gallon buckets, right?
I remember telling Drea the time in my life that I figured out the things that I looked forward in, like food that I looked forward to as a kid was like 25 cents. Like, cause I looked forward to like ramen noodles. I was like, yes, ramen noodles. It's so awesome. Or we have corned beef hash. I don't know if it's just the can. It looks like dog food. It looks, but I still love corned beef hash because I looked forward to having corned beef hash.
Dude, I tell you, it's something that we went back home recently, and Kimberly and I were driving through in my hometown. I mean, I grew up in East Tennessee, and my hometown looks exactly like it did in the 80s, right? I mean, exactly like it did in the 80s. And so, of course, you go back there, and all the memories they're fresh because it looks exactly the same, right? And I remember we went to a place called Stop and Go. In small towns, they always have cute little names for the stores, right? So it's called Stop and Go. And I remember going in there, and my allowance when I was like 9-10 years old was I would get 1 food stamp a month. And with food stamps, at the time, I don't know if they still do, but now you don't pay tax, right? And so, and you can only use it to buy food. It's called food stamp, right?
Yeah.
And so I would go in with my 1 food stamp, and I remember the big bag of sour cream and onion potato chips was 99 cents, right? And so I would go in every single month, and they knew, right? They'd come in, and they'd have my bag of sour cream and onion potato chips, and I'd give them my food stamp, and they'd give me the penny back. And I would take my penny and my bag of sour cream and onion, I'd go around behind the store, and I would just sit there and eat it. And I absolutely love sour cream and onion potato chips. Right? They're terrible for you, and they're kind of like whatever. Like now, if you see me eating sour cream and onion potato chips, like I'm a 41-year-old man. Like it's like, why are you sitting? But I love them.
I mean, you can still have chips, no matter how old you are.
Yes, fair enough. But I remember it's so funny, like that memory that it's so vivid. I can still taste them like in the memory, right? So anyway, that I wanted to definitely. I didn't know that about the special forces, but it makes a lot of sense. That adversity is the number one thing.
That's it.
That is the only common thread.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you could say the same thing in business.
All right, so that is time for us. We've been sitting here BSing for about an hour.
I don't know if we hit any of the stuff you wanted to hit.
Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. But I always appreciate talking to you because it's I leave like excited and refreshed, and it's great. And now we're gonna go do the same thing 2 days in a row, but it'll be great. So thank you for coming and doing this with me. And if you sat through this for an hour, thank you for also sitting and staying with us for an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. And I cannot wait to see where you go from here. And I'll be there with you every step of the way, right? Because why the heck not? You're a racehorse, man. So I'm going to link my cart to yours.
I'm for it, man. I'm for
Love
it.